Hi, my name is Donna Kendrick, and I am here to share with you the gift of financial empowerment, strategies, and support during the holidays. Now, I am the author of A Guide to Widowhood, Navigating the First 3 Years with Your Heart, Soul, and Finances Intact. I'm also the host of the Widow Wisdom and Wealth podcast. So, a little bit of background about me, because I always say you can't really teach something that you haven't experienced yourself. So, back in 2013, I lost my husband, Greg, suddenly. I was 40 years old. I was making $17,500 a year. I had an 8-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, and I was like, oh boy, what are we going to do next? Now, we lost him on November 2nd. And here comes the holiday season. I mean, it was rolling at us quick. My family was always the Thanksgiving family. We were where everyone came. We usually made 2 turkeys. He came from a large Irish Catholic family. He was the youngest of 5 brothers and sisters. Everyone has usually about 3 kids each minimum. So just imagine how big our Thanksgiving table was with the immediate family. Then we add my family, then we add the layers. Oh my, we had like tables in U shapes and going into other rooms. So I can honestly say within the first 24 to 48 hours after Greg's passing, I thought to myself, what the heck are we going to do for Thanksgiving? And I immediately reached out to my sister-in-law and said, if you guys think I'm doing Thanksgiving, you're crazy. One of you have to take it. Now, we did go to Thanksgiving at my sister-in-law's house, and it was weird, right? It was 3 weeks after we had lost Greg, and it wasn't our normal tradition. Now, I knew I pretty much didn't have the time, the energy, the wherewithal to plan a big Thanksgiving. That's why I surrendered it within the first 48 hours of Greg's passing. But when I look back on it, I do know we can't change things that happened in the past. I wonder if maybe it would have felt a little bit better for everyone to be in the house. Everyone brings potluck, maybe, right? But just to be together in that same place that we celebrated. Well, let's fast forward to the holiday season of Christmas. We celebrate Christmas. So that year, I had decided to have Christmas Eve at my brother-in-law and sister-in-law's house on my husband's side. They had 3 kids about the same age as my children. So I figured we would stay over Christmas Eve. We would all open gifts together on Christmas morning. That would be something that was exciting for the kids. They had never opened gifts with their cousins. And maybe that would help I would say distract the kids from the fact that their dad wasn't there to open gifts with them that morning. Now, let's also say when Greg passed, his income went too, right? We didn't have his income for the holidays. But I will tell you that his life insurance benefit came in about a week before Christmas. And I bought a lot for my kids. I spoiled them that year. I had no limits. What did I do inadvertently? I set the precedence of what I was trying to live up to for Christmases in the future. Right. So when year 3 after Greg's passing came and I went back to school and stopped working, let's just say that was a slim pickings Christmas. The kids were a little offset by it. I share all these stories with you so that as we go through our strategies for financial empowerment over the holidays, you see where I'm coming from. Some of it comes from research. Some of it comes from education. Some of it comes from my own experience. I'll also tell you that that Christmas morning was also when my youngest son started questioning Santa Claus's delivery system, being that it looks like Uncle Pat had maybe a little too much to drink Christmas Eve and rearranged all of the gifts under the tree so that my youngest 8-year-old was actually opening up his sister's underwear and t-shirt bras, you know, the stocking stuffers that sometimes arrive, socks, things like that. So there was massive confusion on Christmas morning, massive piles of gifts to put back in the car and bring back home. And again, we were away from home. We were away from our own house. And that was the tradition that I overlooked for my kids, that maybe they wanted to be at home. Maybe they wanted to have that peace that morning. I don't know. I just share it with you because there's lots of different opportunities. There's lots of different considerations. There's lots of different ways to do it. So whether you're in the first few weeks or months of widowhood, like I was when the holidays ran through back in 2013, whether you're 2 or 3 years out saying, all right, how do we do this well? Or whether you're 10 years out like I am now, what are some at least financial strategies that we can help control, because we can't always control the emotion of the holidays. So let's get going. We're going to talk a little bit about how to develop a holiday spending plan. Then we'll move towards how to set limits and priorities. And then we'll talk a little bit about some really smart shopping tips. And we will end a little bit about you, right? How to navigate the family and finances and those conversations that might pop up during the holiday season. So let's dive in. The first thing we want to do when we're approaching the holiday season is pretty much say, do I have a spending plan? Back in 2016, the average American spent $800 on the holiday season. I tend to think in the East Coast of America, where I am now, that looks more like 2000. But what you need to do is think back on holidays in the past, the last year or two, about how much did we spend during that holiday season. We'll get into that a little bit about going back and seeing who's on the list, who was naughty, who was nice. But let's talk about your spending plan. We have to start our spending plan is understanding on a day-to-day basis, how much do we spend? Monthly, what does it cost us to raise our family? What does it cost to be you? And there's a difference between your needs and your wants, right? Your the money you have to spend to keep afloat, to keep the lights on, to feed everyone semi-nutritiously versus your lifestyle. And so where are we talking about really your needs right now? So we always say, let's look at our widow's journey. Where are we right now? Are we in that first year? Are we in that third year? Are we having our own income? Are we surviving on Social Security benefits? Do we have fixed flows of income like Social Security, like pension from maybe our late spouse? How much savings do we have put aside? Are there other streams of income coming in from maybe investments moving forward? Once we identify where our income is, then we have to look at where our spend is, right? So when we're talking about income for this situation, we'll talk about post-tax. You've already paid your taxes. What comes home into your checking and your savings account, right? Determine that income. What's earned income? What are fixed incomes coming in? And then we really have to track what we've been spending. Many of times people say, go back the last month and look. I like to go back the last 3 months. Now use technology at your side. If you're a pen and paper type of person, awesome, go for it. Use your ledger, use your checkbook, use your online banking system, but there are lots of technology. I'm not endorsing or supporting any of them, but some of the experiences with widows in my community, they've used Mint. I think there's one called Rocket. I myself use what's called my AdviceWorks client portal through my financial planning practice. Any of those will work well, but really go back in 3 months and set up some basic categories on how you spend. What do we spend on food? And then make subcategories. What is on groceries? What is for fast food? And what is for a nice night out, right? So in my family, we many of times are running from baseball practice to lacrosse practice. And so sure, we'll stop at fast food. But that's very different than planning a birthday celebration where we go to a restaurant. I like to track that, but we're all a little different. And then you'll track things like basic utilities, gas, if there's tolls, find what are those repetitive categories, create those and track those for about 3 months. And that will really give you a good look at how much money it costs you to be you. Now, I'm going to give you a quick little challenge. Before you see that number, before you start tracking, take a guess. Most of us guess way too low. And when we find out what we spend on things, we call it my family clickety clicks, right? Those online quick purchases through Amazon or Old Navy, things like that, right? Our quick clickety clicks, we're like, oh, it's just socks. Oh, it's just t-shirts. They start to add in. So take a guess of how much you think your normal family spend is, and then go ahead and start tracking for, I would hope, at least 3 months. And see really what is the cost of what it takes you to be you. Then I want you to move to what's called a rainy day fund, called cash reserve. Having, if you're on your own because of widowhood, having about 6 months of what it costs your family to survive. Again, those basic needs, not lifestyle. Having that money put aside in cash or cash-like products. Right now, it's 2023 of October. If this is something that's evergreen, I'm going to be out there for a while. We have great CD rates at 4 and 5%, right? Or high yield money markets that you have access. There's no lock-in rate. Those are great places to put your cash reserve. That is not money that we are going to be spending for the holidays. That is money that we're going to be putting aside for rainy days. Should there be a loss of income? Should there be a huge damage to the house that isn't covered by insurance? Should there be a need for money for a deposit for rent? That's what we use our cash reserve for. So if we have that money available, pull it aside. Let's not use it for holiday spending. If we don't have that yet, remember that as part of our savings plan. We would like to fund that over the next year or two. So we want to make sure we're taking that monthly contribution towards building our cash reserve in account when we're talking about how much can we spend for the holidays. And then we have what we also call as those long-term savings goals, right? So we talk about what is our income post-tax. I should have actually said, what's our income post-savings for retirement? If you're in retirement, then good for you. You have your welcome. I'm glad that you have worked so hard and that you can put your feet up for a little bit. You want to know where your flows of income are coming and how you're saving for additional long-term goals. So we know our spending plan, right? Because we've tracked it, right? We understand how much it costs for us to be us. We're going to be goaling, if not putting aside money for our cash reserve. We're going to be taking consideration that we have to save for long-term goals. Retirement can last 20 to 30 years, right? And then we have to identify the areas of change, right? When we went through and we see how many clickety clicks we have at Old Navy, did we really need that? When we see how much we spend in fast food, what does that compare to our grocery bills? Can we pull back for a few months to make a little pool of savings to help with our holiday spend? Another really good practice as we're moving forward towards creating our holiday spending plan is actually managing your debt. If you have debt on credit cards, short-term debt, we want to make sure that we put those in priorities of how much the credit limit is on the account, how much of that limit we have used. So for example, if you have $10,000 available in American Express and you have an outstanding balance, usually month to month, about $2,000, that gives you about $8,000 credit available to use. And then we also want to see, are we able to pay those off monthly, or are we just making monthly payments? We want to list the APRs from highest to lowest. If we have some of those credit card deals out there where we can actually, transfer for a zero balance, like when does that mature? We want to have a good handle on that before we make any decisions to put more purchases on credit. All right, we're moving on. Now we have to figure out, who do we have to buy for? Well, we've heard Santa make that list, who's naughty and who's nice. Who did you buy for last year? Who's new in your world? If you are in the first year of widowhood, there's a lot of new people. We might have counselors. Our kids might have moved some school districts. We might have moved ourselves to a new retirement community. We sold that house that we lived with our spouse for the last 40 years. Who is new on that list, right? And then we also want to take a tally of what did we spend last year, right? And what is our average spend? That might need to go down. That might have to go up, right? And then I want you to track the non-gift expenses, the cards, the postage, the driving, the decorating, the clothes, the cookie trays, things like that we might actually have to afford. A good example, my daughter goes to school up in Boston. We picked her up for Thanksgiving last year. Oh my goodness, it took us 19 hours round trip. The amount that we paid for gas in our Suburban, the amount we paid for tolls, all in. The 6 kids we had in the car that we had to feed twice because we were on the car for 19 hours. The whole trip cost us $525. Guess who did not have that in her holiday spending budget? That would be me. So let's move. We have to talk about setting limits and priorities. The limit now is that I will not drive to Boston the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, and she can take a train for $80. New limits and priorities. But I want you to examine them. Sometimes it's very hard to say no to buying gifts. Sometimes it's very hard to stop doing for everybody, right? But you might be really, you might have volunteered for every gobble wobble on Thanksgiving morning, right? But now you're on your own cooking for Thanksgiving. You might not be able to do that. And I want you to practice saying no. No is one of the hardest words in my own vocabulary, but sometimes you have to say no, and that maybe next year, this just isn't the time. I want you to always to examine the traditions that you've had in the past. It might be time for new traditions. I would love for you to write those down of what happens between November, December, New Year's. What traditions do you love? What traditions light you up? And which ones drain you? And maybe put those on pause for 2023. Determine what gives you the most joy. Determine what motivates your giving and align that. Also align that with your gifts up above, right? Sometimes if we take some of these visits to the high school reunion for the top 10 people in our class that we do every year. Well, maybe this just isn't the year we do that. That might have taken 10 bottles of wine off your purchase list. Just saying. Okay, so determine your spending limits too. We now see how much it takes us to spend. We now know our income. We might have a handle on our debt, our credit card balance is hanging out there. So how much really can we spend? And this is when, let's say if you set that budget and it is $2,000, right? How are we going to spend that money? What is going to be on gifts? What is going to be for those outside expenses? And I want you to first communicate to anyone who might influence your purchasing that this is your budget. I've talked about my daughter in Boston. She can convince me to buy anything, but I've had to tell her, especially that year that I went back to school, this is going to be a lean holiday. Please, please don't try to convince me to buy a gift that's outside of the limit. I know that would make the person happy, or I know that would be the perfect gift, but it might not be this year. And then as you start buying things, I want you to track your expenses. I want you to put them in a notebook. I want you to put them on your phone, because what we track has an impact. Now let's move to some smart shopping tips. Big money mistakes, right? Not researching what we want to buy ahead of time. If you know that you want to buy a BMX bike, am I dating myself, for our son, let's go ahead and do all of that research. Let's hit Consumer Reports. Let's look on Amazon. Let's look on the local sporting goods and bicycle shops. So we kind of know in general what's a good deal or not. So when we might have that brilliant buy, my mom used to call them blue light specials. Anyone who knows Kmart when they were little, you start running for that sale item because it was so good. And a lot of our online providers do that, where you might have 2 hours to buy that item while supplies last. So we race to it. Well, if you already kind of know how much it's going to cost, you can jump at those opportunities. So be smart about that. Try not to buy last minute, because then we're actually looking at whatever's offered for priority delivery. We're not really looking at the price, or we go dashing to the mall and then we just have to purchase whatever's left, which most likely is the most expensive items. Again, make sure that you are bargain shopping. That's fine. But if we're putting it on credit cards and then we're paying interest in the future, is that really a bargain? Again, and I said early on that I was guilty of excessive gifting, especially that first year off after loss. Take my advice. Give yourself a 24-hour rule. If you're planning ahead and you're shopping ahead and you think, ooh, I think that's the perfect gift, right? But maybe that's the 9th gift on the list for said person. Take a break. Give yourself 24 hours. And if in 24 hours later you say, yeah, it really is, and go ahead and take that cart to checkout, right? Otherwise it can sit in the cart or sit in the wish list for a little while. And again, when you plan your shopping, you're going to stick to your plan. Please know any of the return policies. Can you drop it off somewhere? Is it over 30 days? I shop usually in October for all of the holidays, but then it's a 30-day return. So when someone opens it in December, I've missed the return window. So that's something I have to pay attention to. And a really good idea for many people, if this might be the first or second year after losing our spouse or a partner, is just going to what we call bulk gift cards. You can go to one of our bulk shopping areas around me. There's BJ's, there's Sam's Club, there's Costco, and you can buy gift cards like that, like half the value or a reduced value of it. And maybe it's okay just to give gift cards out this year with a sweet, meaningful note. Save your time, save your energy. If you love giving gifts, go give them. Spend your energy there. But if you don't, this might be a great alternative. Other great gifting alternatives could be homemade food, could be crafts, could be giving of your time. I remember making a coupon book for my dad when I was little, and I was like in second grade, so I had no money, of a free car wash. I gave him 10 of them. The joy on my dad when it was a July day and I was out riding bikes with my friend, shaking the gift card or the coupon in front of the driveway, and I had to stop and wash his car. Such a good thing. Maybe create a family cookbook, right? All of those recipes that your spouse used to make that you want to share with the family. These things, these gifts of crafts and homemade food items, maybe someone's favorite meal that they haven't had made in the past, can be priceless. When you're shopping, make sure you're always checking your safety. Make sure that the websites that you are shopping on are actually approved, that they have that little lock window in the side. Make sure that you're checking your credit card statements, your online versions during that November, December, January period. If you need to pull your credit report, that's not your FICO score, it's your credit report, which actually shows you which credit cards you have open, what the balances are, have you missed any payments. You can get that at annualcreditreport.com. Okay, let's move on to talking to your friends and your families about your finances. This can be very tricky. People, especially in the first few years after you've lost a spouse or a partner, want to know the answer to, am I going to be okay? Is she okay, right? Make sure that you have an advocate wherever you are, right? That one private person that you know will respect your privacy. Should you share with them, money is a little tight this year. I went back to school. I really am trying hard to live on a budget. I really can't spend too much. Can you maybe, how would you say it? Set the scene before I walk in, right? If you know that maybe it's a holiday party, and just kind of let everyone know what's happening, because I don't want to answer the questions 200 times. Or it's even set your boundaries. Maybe you don't want to talk about finances at all during the holidays, right? And if someone's like, so how are you doing? You're able to make ends meet? You can be like, oh my God, it's the holidays. Let's talk about that in February, right? Or, oh, everything okay? Did the life insurance come through? Is everyone set? Like, you know what? That's my family's private finances. Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate it. We've got this covered. I'm working with a professional. Another tip is always to communicate your plans. Make sure that if you are not maybe attending every holiday get together, that you're doing it with intention. Sometimes people will worry about you. If you used to go to the high school reunion of the top 10 people in class, and all of a sudden you're not there, right? Because you always brought the really good wine. Make sure you communicate ahead of time, right? So that people don't worry about you. So those are some of my tips for having to navigate the family and our friends around our finances. Find an advocate who can help you navigate conversations. Make sure you set your boundaries and what you will and will not share, and also communicate your plans ahead of time. I am Donna Kendrick, and I hope that this helped you with navigating your finances, having some strategies in force for the holiday season this year. And I hope it helped you be a little bit more empowered financially. Again, feel free to reach out to me, donna@widow-wisdom.com. My book is A Guide to Widowhood, Navigating the First 3 Years. And you can always follow my podcast on Google, Apple, and Spotify, and that is Widow, Wisdom, and Wealth. Have a great day.